Jesus meets the women of Jerusalem. It's a curious phrase. After all, what does it mean? Were they some kind of organised body like the Mothers' Union or the Women's Institute or the Jerusalem branch of the Seroptimists? That's probably a bit dubious. Actually, in Luke's Gospel, it just says that among the crowd there were a great many women who mourned and lamented over Jesus on his journey to the cross. But Jesus addresses them collectively, and so in the 8th station of the cross they are remembered as the women of Jerusalem. Jesus doesn't seem to thank them for their kindness. He turns to them, which must have been painful given the suffering that he's already experienced, and he calls them. "Daughters of Jerusalem," he says, "do not weep for me, weep for yourselves and for your children, for the days are coming, which will bring distress and anguish and despair, when people will say, 'Happy the ones who never bore children.'" And as he moves on, he says something even harder to interpret to them. "For if these things are done when the wood is green, what will happen when it dries?" People have long tried to guess what that meant. Something to do perhaps with the wood he carries across his back, the newly cut down tree to make a fresh cross, still with the sap in it. Something to the effect that it won't stay as Good Friday forever, and the wood will dry out with time, but the cross will stay as a sign on the hill above the city, above the world, calling silently across the landscape for people to repent in every generation for their sins. The reaction of these women, called the Daughters of Jerusalem, isn't mentioned, but the wretched procession passes on up the hill towards its final destination. We're almost there. I find this one a hard station to understand. A little way back, when Jesus met Veronica, he left her with an image of himself on her cloth, a gift for devotion and prayer. But in contrast, this gift that he leaves with the women is just some words, and not words that feel very encouraging at that. A prophecy, a warning, even possibly a strange expression of sympathy for the suffering of the world. An odd kind of reversal, if so, Jesus offering sympathy to the women when we thought it was supposed to be the other way round. Maybe all we can say is that it's only from another perspective than the one that the world usually works with that any of this makes any sense. Only by the logic of God can we ever imagine that this Friday is good. Lord, be known to everyone who weeps, who mourns, who laments, like the women of Jerusalem. Be with the ones who weep for your misery, the ones who weep for their own misery, and the ones who weep for the misery of the world. Be with the ones who weep for all three, all muddled up, criss-crossed, in and out of one another.